Okay, so I just want to talk about this black cottonwoods that I'm building up here. And you can see I got this little book here. As you know, I've mentioned it before, the tree book, Learning to Recognize Trees of British Columbia, which was reprinted, I think, in 91 or something, or 95. Yeah. You can still get it. It's a great little book if you're into trees on the West Coast. Um, So this gives a pretty good overview of it, of all the trees. If you're into modeling trees, it tells you the bark is smooth, yellowish gray on younger trees, but grows thick and deeply grooved with age. The bark on these trees are very similar to Douglas fir, I find. And I have, well, there's lots around where I live. Um, and they grow, 120 feet high. So, but I took a photo of a couple down the road just off the river. They're massive. Like these ones are about 120 feet. So these trees are 16, 17 inches high, which is just about right for this. And it's still winter. Well, it's early spring now, late winter, so they haven't leafed out yet. So, and the sun was going down, so it gives you a good skeletal profile of the tree and the branch structure, which I always like. And you can see, I'll just show you the ones that I'm working on. There's 3, but what I did was I went on a bit of a branch building binge. This is a bit different than just twisting up the wire trees, that I've shown before. Winding, looping. That's one way of doing trees, one of many ways. I also like doing this way too. They do require, like they take longer. They don't seem as hard as hard work as the other ones, I guess, or persistent, process. But like anything, if you want nice trees, you got to treat them like models, right? And so I went on a binge. I made about 50 of these, I think. Twisted them up with wire, and as I've shown. And what I do is I just take the tree. In this case, this is a 3/8 dowel. I use anywhere from 1/2 inch, 3/8 to 1/4 inch wooden dowels. Cut them at 16 inches, and then I basically just taper them with a hand plane, and then rough them up with just a razor saw or a hacksaw, a hacksaw blade. And then what I do is I just drill a hole. In this case, I use a Dremel. I'll just do one here quick for you. All right, so then I'll take one of these, and just cut off the loop from the twist. And then I take CA, medium strength CA, flood the hole. I like to flood the hole because it soaks into the wire armature anyway, which is good, and it'll hold it really well. I find that they're not going anywhere unless you reef on them with a pair of vice grips. But and then I just take the pliers and shove them in tight. It's about a 1/8 hole, and there you go. And just let it sit up on the bench. And now I can basically, I can airbrush these later. So once they're shaped or whatever, then I'll just airbrush these dark like this here, dark brown, and then I'll just flock them with some leaf material. And you can see a bit of the taper and how I added to the top here, just to flare out the top, so they got that cottonwood look to them. Okay, so you can see that these are all covered in sawdust now. They actually look like real branches, like they're, you know, like they're like a real branch. So, you know, they're worth the work if you're into treating a tree like a model. So with this sawdust on here, um, one of the things that can occur is they can crack sometimes, like this little skin on here. If you bend these, like if you like to bend and shape them, that's the beauty of the wire armature branches. You can actually shape the branches, right? Okay. Now, the problem is sometimes pieces crack off, not that easily, but they do, and then you see the wire armature underneath. Now, if you want to remedy that, what I recommend is I just take some matte medium and I just paint them. Thin this down a bit. I just put a light skim of matte medium over them. If you want to render the branch into a nice model that you can compose later for a scene in a certain way. This way it puts a flexible membrane around the branch, so when you do bend it, they don't crack. The bark stays intact and you have a nice texture on the limb there. Okay? Okay, so you can see I've made quite a few of these wire armature limbs or branches. And so what I'm doing is I'm just taking them now, they're bendable, so they've been twisted up from wire, 28 gauge wire, just to summarize quick, and then carpenter's glue 50-50 sprinkled with sawdust. And then after they dried, I just coated them quick in matte medium. The reason why I did that, I think I mentioned earlier, is to just seal them so that when you bend them back and forth, because these are bendable and shapeable, formable, right? You can compose them, you know, to any sort of shape that you want, right? You can, which is a beautiful thing, really, when you think about it, that you can actually, you know, they have a very scale look and they can be bent and shaped, you know, any way you want. Now what I'm doing is I'm just sort of straightening them out a little bit so I can thatch the 12 mil across the limb. So if you put them closer together like this, all right, and then when you lay them down, you just matte medium like the tips of these, you just lay the thatch on top, you just thatch on top and then go lay them to dry and then massage them off and then just thatch them again and then they splay out more. Okay, they look like real branches, don't they? It's pretty cool. It lasts 50 years, 100 years, these two. Okay, so I take my limb like this and I've got them sort of splayed out like a fork or a rake in order to support the 12 mil, right? So what I do is I just take some matte medium, in this case it's straight matte medium, you know, which has really good viscosity to begin with out of the bottle. It's not super thick. At least the Liquitex is, and that's the one I like to use a lot. People have asked about the type of matte medium I like. I like to use this here. You just have to go with what you like and move on, right? Because there's so many processes here. When you're confident in a product, well, then you should stick with it. Okay, so I just lay it on top like this so that it supports it, you know, like a rake, like a summer rake, you know, remember that? And then I just leave it thatched like that, okay? And then I just lay it down on a piece of wax paper to the side and I move on to the next one. And the idea is that you build up a like a thatched framework. You shake them off when they're done, dry, and then now you've got lots of tooth to stab in, like to thatch again, like when you just dip it in thinner. I like to go over this because sometimes people miss stuff, and I understand why that happens, because it's a it's a fairly methodical process. So once you got a like a framework of thatch already on there, now you got a lot of teeth to hold glue and so on. So you can dilute them at medium 50-50, dip it in, and then rethatch again, and you'll see it'll splay out more, and you'll build up more of a secondary branch structure or twigs, or eventually the framework for supporting your choice of flocking. Okay, and then you can massage your way, and you just can shape the limb any way you like. Okay. Okay, so cottonwoods, they have this quite a large crown on the top like this, and the limbs, they kind of merge out. So rather than getting it all fat in one area, because you got to merge in these branches, which I've pre-built right here. You can see I've pre-built and did the secondary branch flock. Just makes it easier, to build the tree up in this particular case anyway, like this. But I'll show you how I merge this in like this, like into the wooden dowel. Okay, so I take a Dremel with this little grinder bit, little round size. It's about a, in terms of the size of the head on it, it's about 1/8. Yeah, 1/8. Okay, and this is what I do. I'm going to take one of these pre-made limbs and nip off where the pliers hole was. Take some CA. And just clamp it. And you end up with, see how it's merged in, and then I'll just take some texture paste and just brush that in just to blend it all in to the trunk. That way I get a nice flared out crown for the cottonwoods. Okay, so now I'm going to start flocking the cottonwood. And what I'm going to do is a little technique I figured out today when I was doing a lot of painting and I was doing some thin oversprays on this leaf material when it's on the model and dry, and how you can change up the tone of the color. So obviously this color here is too bright just as it is, and as most of you know, I like to paint everything later, like dust over stuff and add filters to get that look, the continuity of the overall diorama and scene or layout. So I just want to show you this little bush that I made. This is the same light green flock, but what I did was I sprayed a very thin, almost rusty red brown over top, and I really like that. Like, that's sort of the earlier part of the year, the early summer, late spring, that I really want for the black cottonwood. Obviously I don't want, this color, right? It's just too opaque and doesn't look good. So I was doing a bunch of bushwork and I thought, that's the look I was after, the color. So I can airbrush that later it's a very thin wash, so even when you spray it on, it doesn't really lighten the dark branches as much, because this is dark, see? But you can see it's lighter underneath, right? But you can see how it renders it down a bit to a more earthy tone, which I like, a warmer color. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to take some matte medium, in this case Liquitex, and I'm just going to dab on the tops of these branches. Okay, just with a big brush like that, wicked on both sides so it's wet with glue. And then I'm just going to wet these branches now. Okay, and I'm just going to lay on a little bit of flock. We'll see how the first one goes. Okay. You can see how the branch work, sort of shows through, that shadow. And then when that wash goes on, like, here's the difference. See with an airbrush what you can do? You lay that on there. See the difference? See how you can shift the color tone with an airbrush after it's flocked as well. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do, because that's the look I want, because I don't have any flock. I have quite a bit of leaf flock, and I don't have this color, obviously. I have ones that are similar, but not like that. That's the color I'm really after, okay? Okay, so here's the flocked cottonwood. You can see it's this lighter knock, right? The light green leaves. Number 07142. And I'm going to paint them with the airbrush, because they're, like, I don't know if you can tell now, I mean, they look good from certain, viewpoints and so on, but they're a bit too sort of pea green, sort of, but I'm going to tone them down. Like, this is my sample that I like. Just I'm going to turn them this color, and they'll meet my satisfaction. So I'm probably going to replace a couple of trees just by the yard office, because I meant to have cottonwoods there. I have some stand-ins for now, which I'll move, the sort of maple style ones, over to the beginning of section 2, where the old growth Cathedral Grove kind of section is going to be, before it transitions down to the shops, the SRY shops. But anyway, yeah, it turned out pretty good. I like it. It's a wood metal tree, right? Cottonwood.